Welcome to the second to last of these live Ask Tyler shows. Fuck, this is why I don't want to do this live. I would have just started the StreamYard over if this had been a recorded one. But yeah, second to last show of this format. There will be some big changes after that. But yeah, we'll have this show this week. And then next week, and then we will, have some other things. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic, man. We were just talking about how great the Bruins are doing. I know this is a football show, but it's good to be in Boston these days, isn't it, Conan?
Absolutely. No, I'm excited for the Bees. I'm excited for the C's, and still got some, football, some new signings recently that kind of surprised me, and I think it's we're getting ready for the draft still. Excited to kind of get into more stuff.
Oh yeah.
So there'll be some questions in the chat, hopefully. Otherwise, I'll just talk about whatever I want, which is going to be bad. I'll tell you that. It's going to be bad. It's going to be about complaining about something. So we don't want that. Put questions in the chat if you want to avoid that. It's been an interesting week of football news or lack thereof. What do you guys think? Is there anything like on the agenda?
I mean, that one signing I was referencing, obviously, OBJ deciding, was it last night?
What's up, gentlemen?
Dave, what up, dude?
How we doing?
What up?
Yeah, no, OBJ. I did a short video. It was terrible. I don't know how to do shorts. Maybe someone could help me with that. That is a plug, by the way. I'm looking for someone to do that. But and now I just closed the show sheet. This has really been a day. Okay.
Sally, you didn't get the plaid memo. I think everyone else.
I'll wear. You can bury me in plaid. That's the only time where I think I would wear plaid. I mean, to be buried, sure, but otherwise, I don't really think it looks good on me. I always say
like you'd come back and haunt us if we did.
Well, the problem is that everyone always wants to hear more about my fantasy football OnlyFans career. This is what's going to happen if you don't put more questions in the chat. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how that's getting started. It's going to be many, many things. We're going to talk about that. And I don't know. I mean, there's many things to talk about with that in plaid, but
Just went to OnlyFans.
I talk about it every week now. This is why this show is being canceled. It's because when I'm live with multiple other people on the show, I talk about nonsense, and when I'm solo, I do so much better.
Well, we're here to help. It looks like we got a question already.
I know, finally. So from Gavin, I traded DJ Moore and Jerry Jeudy for Garrett Wilson. It caused the league uproar. Is that justified? What do we think? Is it justified?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the trades like this all depend on the format. Like, if I'm in a 10-team league where you start 2 wide receivers and a flex, then I'm willing to do the 2-for-1s for the guy I think is best. But you also have to keep in mind that Garrett Wilson, we love the upside, but it's not like he was like wide receiver 7. I feel like with all the hype surrounding him, it's as if Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson were wide receiver 7 and 8 or something like that. These guys finished as outside the top 20. In points per game, Olave was wide receiver 27, and Garrett Wilson was wide receiver 31. So it really is a very speculative move on your part. It could pan out, but I could see why they would be a little worked up over something like that.
I don't know. I mean, Garrett Wilson had 147 targets as a rookie.
There's been a ton of guys ridiculous. Though. There's been a ton of guys that have gotten those, and like we just pretend like it didn't happen. Like we pretend like Kelvin Benjamin didn't have way more points per game than a guy like Garrett Wilson. We pretend like Eddie Royal didn't have 191 catches, right? Like it's easy to sweep it under the rug when it doesn't pan out. So that's my concern with guys like that. Like I like all these guys: Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Treylon Burks. I like them all, but just know that there are often times where those guys aren't, wide receiver 1s immediately moving forward. I mean, they're not even wide receiver 1s this year.
I mean, it's rare.
Like they went the opposite. They said I got a steal for Garrett.
Oh, they
So-
did. Yeah, this is a terrible trade. I mean, Garrett Wilson by a mile. I mean, this is an easy trade in favor of the Garrett Wilson.
I don't know. I kind of like. I don't mind the other side. Like, so again, if it's a situation where you have 3 wide receivers, and I'm in a lot of leagues that have multiple flex spots. I mean, I don't see why. Jerry Jeudy's 24 years old. DJ Moore hasn't even entered the age apex yet. You might have got 2 starters. I mean, there's no guarantee that Garrett Wilson is even going to finish higher than those guys this year. You know, so it depends where you're at. It really does.
Well,
I think it's also like your team comp too. You know, if you only have a couple studs and you really need to fill some more gaps, then I don't mind the trade in the sense that you're not getting 2 like pieces back for a stud.
Right.
You're still getting 2 younger, you know, haven't reached their prime guys. And yeah, that might cost you the entirety of Garrett Wilson's career, which might have some very, very high highs. But in a vacuum, like if you need, you know, more starters, you have, you know, 2-3 studs, but you can't really fill the rest of your other positions, your starting positions. Like I understand wanting to do that. And if you have the need, especially, but I think still overall, like I want Garrett Wilson. I'm excited about what we saw last year. Obviously, you know, Aaron Rodgers is hopefully still going to the Jets.
That would be nice. You know,
I don't really know. You know, I thought it was finally done 2-3 weeks ago. He's on the McAfee show, and we're still here now. And every piece of news that comes out of that is, you know, I don't really know how I feel about it. It's like, you know, the Jets think they're asking for too much, and they're not willing to part with this and that, and so it's a little messy, but I think we're still working with the assumption that Aaron Rodgers will be the quarterback there throwing to Garrett Wilson. And obviously that is a massive, massive upgrade from what he's had.
Right.
It's pretty simple, really. I mean, Jerry Jeudy is fine. He's fine. 3 years of fine. I mean, it's not, you don't become elite after 3 years of fine. He's had plenty of opportunity. It's no more of Jerry Jeudy. He is what he is. You know, he's fine. DJ Moore is even more extreme. DJ Moore, 5 years. Yes, I hear about a quarterback problem for 5 years. I don't want to hear about a quarterback problem for 5 years. We would have seen something in 5 years to show that DJ Moore is going to be an elite asset. He's not. He's not. DJ Moore is very good. Very good. There are a lot of receivers like this. You know, very good. Jerry Jeudy is a step down for me from that even. Jerry Jeudy's good. Just good. Garrett Wilson had a much better rookie year than either of those two. I mean, those two both struggled as rookies. Garrett Wilson was far superior to either of them. To me, this is not close. And this is part of the reason why people are saying they don't want this show anymore. Because they say I bring on guests, and then when they don't agree with me, I like.
Well, the thing is, we'd have no fantasy football if we didn't disagree at times. You know what I mean? But again, it's like we look at, you go through history and look at the best wide receiver as a rookie. It's not always the guy that is the best from the class, even. Like 2010 Mike Williams for the Bucks was amazing, right? Like he had a great rookie year. And it turns out that the rest of the class, Des Bryant and Demaryius Thomas and Antonio Brown and Emmanuel Sanders and Eric Decker, they were all better. They were all better than Mike Williams. So, I mean, we think Garrett Wilson is going to be great. But last year, Jerry Jeudy put up better fantasy points than Garrett Wilson, at least on a per game basis. Jeudy missed a couple games. Like we don't know. We don't know for sure. That's why, to me, I don't think it's as crazy of a trade that I don't think it's something you should get upset about. You know, if DJ Moore,
a different story. That's a different story. Getting upset is a whole other thing. I mean, if you want to get upset, you could have made your own trade. You could have done something yourself. I mean, that's just being lazy. You know,
exactly.
There's nothing to get upset about. That is, you know, the league uproar. I don't give a fuck about that. But no, I mean, we know, you know, 2010 Mike Williams, very different. We know that's 4th round pick. We know that these 1st round picks who have this kind of target volume as rookies, you know, unless something happens to them. You mentioned Kelvin Benjamin. Kelvin Benjamin missed his entire 2nd year with an injury. You know, that's why his career, we don't know what his career might have been without that. Typically, if you have this kind of year as a rookie, and then, you know, you don't get hurt and you continue to proceed to play this good as a rookie, those are usually your Hall of Famers. Those are usually your Hall of Famers. Those are usually your elite Pro Bowlers. Those are the kind of players you usually get from that pattern.
Right.
You
And
know,
which is why we say typically, of course, right? But it's like
almost
you can't.
yeah, most of the time. I mean, most of those players who are this good as rookies are elite. They end up being elite. I mean, this is your Justin Jefferson. Now he wasn't quite that good, but you know, there are. I mean, that's usually an elite pattern. If you're fantasy viable to this degree as a rookie, usually, and you have first round draft capital, you almost always end up being
Right.
elite unless you get hurt.
I'm just saying. I
that's
just
the
named
reality
like
of the
I just named like 7 guys though.
No, but those guys didn't have first round draft capital, and then one of them got hurt. I mean, as of now, Garrett Wilson is not hurt, and Mike Williams,
Martavis Bryant, like all these guys, like there are plenty of examples. That's all I'm saying.
There's a big difference.
So that's what I'm saying. That there's a real possibility. There's a real. I mean, Jerry Judy's a first round pick, so there's a real possibility.
Judy sucked as a rookie compared to Garrett Wilson. That's the difference.
Well, he missed games. You just said guys that don't get hurt.
Jerry Judy played 16 games as a rookie, and he only had 856 yards. I mean, not nearly as good. As
He's missed games the last couple of years, is what I'm saying.
Oh, no,
but he had 113 targets as a rookie.
Yeah, and he was even worse on them than Garrett Wilson was on his.
But if we're just comparing guys, one rookie versus another rookie, then this game would be easy.
Yeah, I find this to be easy, but you know, this question is easy to me. It's a very easy question.
Right. I would take the Garrett Wilson side, but I'm saying that you shouldn't be upset about the trade.
Well, I would never be upset about any trade.
I agree 100%. And he
Nothing
did
to be upset
clarify it's a 12-team start 9, but he didn't say whether there's a kicker or a defense in that 9. So that obviously makes a difference. There's dynasty leagues with kickers and defenses and 2 receivers. You need to change that.
Right. Yeah. So exactly. If it's like, you know, if it's sometimes in these leagues with like tons of flexes and all that stuff, then maybe you do want to spread things out a little bit. But for the most part, I'm trying to do 2-for-1s like this, where I get the guy I think is the best. But it's worth pointing out that we just don't know. We don't know for sure that Garrett Wilson's going to be better than these guys. Like it's, yeah. If we could just say for like, there's no point that we can just say that for sure anyone's going to be better than anyone. That's what makes this game so much fun.
I mean, you know,
I think.
People want me to say that again. People want me to say I'm sure because that's better content that people want. People want to hear that. When I say I'm sure, it doesn't mean, of course, if you get 65% of stuff right in fantasy football, you're like a god tier fantasy football analyst. I always say that. When I say that I'm sure, it means that I don't have any doubt. I don't have any doubt. I'm not going to change my mind in 5 minutes. I'm not thinking about it. This is one of those where I'm not thinking about it. I see it. It's Garrett Wilson easily. Nothing really to talk about for me. That's why. And you know, people always say this is again why this show is becoming solo in the future, because people think that I'm too mean when I don't
think you're mean at all. It's a matter of like. The approach, like your audience likes you to say for sure and have the hot take and everything, whereas my guys are kind of used to me saying
it's not hot. It's just that they it's something that's very, because I don't think taking Garrett Wilson here is a hot take. I think that's the normal take. But you know, I think that people want to just are interested. Yeah, and just hearing me say it. They
don't want to hear you admit that there's a range of outcomes. They want to hear you plant your flag on something.
No, they just feel that I'm too mean. I'm too mean.
Oh, I don't think you're too mean.
Oh yeah, you don't. But the audience.
But I guess I'm used to arguing about fantasy football like every day.
No, I've gotten that comment from a lot of people on these shows that they've, especially on the big group shows, especially this one, that they've all said like this show is great, except for the part where you bury everyone you bring on. Oh yeah, no, I trust me, bro. I'm fine about that. No, it's actually usually exactly. I hear just that. It's that the people I bring on are okay with it, but the audience thinks that I'm burying you, and that's not what I mean to do. But you know, again, that's why the show is changing format, because I am forcing people to do this AMA show, which is really about me. And it's tough.
So I heard a sad Jets fan with this Aaron Rodgers thing say, like, we're gonna end up with Carson Wentz, aren't we? And
I saw that on Twitter. I don't know if it's the same thing, but I saw someone say that.
Yeah, I mean, it's getting drawn out. I will say this for Garrett Wilson. I love Garrett Wilson, and I would take Garrett Wilson on this side, but the Aaron Rodgers thing is going to be short term. Like, that's not going to be a long term thing. So they're going to have to figure something out for that as well.
Anyone's better than Zach Wilson.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's It's a good point in
Flacco.
terms of, you don't know for sure what's going to happen. Yes, like you never 100% sure, but even just like looking at the list of guys that went for 1,000, keep in mind Garrett Wilson went for 1,100 and didn't really have the touchdowns, but even just the rookies that went for 1,000, the 12 that were before him, I think Kelvin Benjamin, you mentioned, might be the only one that didn't really pan out. We're looking at a list of Waddle, Chase, Jefferson, AJ Brown, Michael Thomas, Amari Cooper, OBJ, Mike Evans, AJ Green, Marquise Colson. Like these are studs.
Wait, why did Mike Evans get
studs.
an
No, he said, it's OBJ.
Oh,
But OBJ got hurt.
Get an,
To his point, OBJ got hurt. Yeah.
But
I mean,
we're
OBJ's
looking
next
at
2 seasons after his rookie year were wide receiver
Yeah.
1 seasons, 2015.
no, you're right. You're right.
Oh, I don't know why he got in it.
It's only because it didn't.
He held
have
the Dynasty wide receiver 1
10-year
overall spot for 4 years.
Right.
So that's not
Fair,
that's
fair.
like
But-
amazing.
So
And
even more so than that, we're looking at guys that have this type of production in their first year. We're looking at one actual miss out of the
Right.
last 12,
and it's the one who
and,
missed
like,
his whole second year.
exactly,
Not a
and
little bit of
even
injury,
then-
the whole thing.
Mhm.
Right.
And even then,
No,
it's like,
this is what I always tell people. And this is why Conan and I are going to be doing some recorded content, because I love how Conan has all of these stats and things like, but this show is so bad because we have no idea what we're going to talk about. So it doesn't let him present some of that stuff that he does on Twitter. And the reason that I added him to the show in the first place. So I feel really bad. So we have a good plan for some recorded podcast style content we're going to do. And if you've followed Conan on Twitter at One Stat One Day and followed some of his threads, we're going to focus on some stuff like that. Maybe play a few games, a few segments, and we're going to make some
Absolutely.
content that, better suits Conan's strengths than random stuff that he can't prepare for. So I'm very happy to announce that. And you can look for that on this channel. We're probably going to release it as release a segment as a video. So a 10 to 15, 20 minute segment. We might record multiple videos during one recording, but we'll release them as segments to make it easier for you to digest, and you can kind of pick and choose what appeals to you, watch however much you want, and not have to like find it in a 2-hour video. So that's something we're going to do together. So I would look for that after the NFL draft in May. We're going to start recording those. So I just wanted, as we're announcing the end of this show format, I also wanted to remind people of the beginning of a new show format that I'm very, very excited for. And it's also a reminder, to make sure that you're using, whenever you're creating fantasy football content or any content, you have to use your the strengths of your people the best you can. My strength is probably not actually running shows with lots of people on them, but I'm great at answering the questions quickly when I don't get distracted. Conan is great with his stats, we're gonna do better. We're gonna do better in the future. And I'll still have my Tuesday show where we will discuss topics. It'll be even more planned, even more. We'll have more mock drafts. I think people seem to love that specifically when we do that live. Live mock drafts seem to be very popular. So we're going to have more of that. And then we will have our NFL draft live stream as well for people to get excited for. Toronto Dave says football party emoji. Okay. I love it. I approve. Toronto Dave has been one of my biggest supporters for a long time. And I love him. Nice shirt. Well, yeah, it's better than all the plaid. Yeah, I think it's very pretty. But thank you. I appreciate that. All right, let's move on to another question. If you roster Njoku on a rebuilding team, what direction would you want to go? Buy, sell, or hold? Go ahead. No, I don't call on people. So just go. Not me, but anyone else.
Conan, you got this one?
I mean, my thinking right now, given what we've had so far this offseason, is I'm either holding or I'm buying for super low, for super cheap. I think that team, obviously, we know they have Nick Chubb. They have this ground and pound. They just want to run the ball. We understand that, but some of the moves they've made, some of what some of the staff have been saying, definitely leads me to believe at least that they're gonna stray a little bit away from that and become like open it up a little bit more, like Tyler's saying with the show, play to their strengths. Deshaun Watson, you gave him all this money, he's supposed to be a great quarterback. Let him actually get out there and do stuff, and not rely on Nick Chubb 30 times a game. So I do think there's an opportunity there. I wouldn't really be trying to sell, but I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's fairly rare to have a team that has two high-end wide receivers and a high-end tight end. Every once in a while when it's very highly consolidated, you can get there. I feel like the Eagles pretty close, right? With AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert. And when you look at Quez Watkins getting like 4 targets a game, that's kind of how it has to be, right? Like AJ Brown and Devonta Smith were getting 8 targets a game. Dallas Goedert was getting 5 or 6, which as a tight end gets you 90 targets. It gets you into that tight end 5-6 range. Like if you have to ask yourself, are you worried about Elijah Moore? Right? Because that team with Amari Cooper pretty locked in only probably has room for one more guy to get 90, 100 plus targets. So if you're worried about Elijah Moore, Donovan Peoples-Jones, maybe you sell him. I think that he's right in the mix for targets there. I don't know. What do you guys think? If you had to bet on David Njoku or Elijah Moore or Donovan Peoples-Jones to get more targets, like who would you pick out of that group to kind of be the second target getter after Amari Cooper?
I mean, I think it'd come down between Njoku and Elijah Moore at this point. Like, I do think they brought him in with a clear, direction of where they kind of wanted to go. But I do think they like Njoku. He's been around for a few years. They've rotated some other tight ends in there that clearly really haven't worked, aka Mr. Austin Hooper. And they'll
a
still
big
find a way
liar,
to
by
get...
the way. Austin Hooper, a big liar. We learned that he does not tell the truth. He claimed today, he made a big claim that Baker Mayfield has, and I quote, never caused any issues in the locker room ever. Big claim. It's a big lie. We learned that we cannot trust anything Austin Hooper says. A big liar. But anyway, I thought that was interesting. But just go ahead with actually relevant things.
No, and I'll go back to Coop said about the targets. You're looking for someone that's going to be top 2 or 3 on the team in targets and top 2 or 3 in the team in air yards. And so Njoku, they did just pay him, and so he has, if you follow the money, it appears to be good, but they also paid Hooper. So it's all relative to price. If I can sell, I'm going to sell. If I can't sell for the right price, then yeah, I'm going to hold. But I think there's talented tight ends in this class. And I do think Elijah Moore is going to be a problem. They paid a pretty high price for him. You're looking at, they paid pick 42, I believe. Pick 43.
Moore and 74.
What was it?
42 for Moore and 74.
Yeah. So they paid a pretty high price. And so I'm going to follow that. Njoku's been in the league for long enough that I'm going to pass if I have the opportunity. And I do like the tight ends in this class. You can pick up a tight end in this class, and then you can figure it out from there with some veterans to bridge the gap. But I'm just out on the Njoku experiment.
I mean, it is what it is. I think that, I don't know, you have to assume that Deshaun Watson is going to be better for it to matter. I don't know about that. We'll have to see. I mean, Amari Cooper will still be the one. I don't know.
That's the problem. Every tight end, so like if you're in a typical 10 to 12 team league, you need a top 5 or 6 tight end if you want to compete in Dynasty, right? It's such a top heavy format. And every guy that's finished top 5 in PPR has gotten either 90 targets or 10 touchdowns. And trying to figure out who's going to get 10 touchdowns is a nightmare in itself, whether it's Robert Tonyan or whatever. So I need those targets. So at the end of the day, it boils down to, can he get the targets? I mean, so do you think, Tyler, 90 targets? Is that possible for Njoku here?
I mean,
yeah,
I don't really care. I mean, he's not someone I want anyway. I don't tend to have many of these guys. I actually don't agree about needing a top 5 tight end. I mean, you can have it, but I either want, if you look, Travis Kelce was on a large portion of winning rosters last year. But other than that, there wasn't much of a pattern, really. I mean, there were a lot of winning rosters had crappy tight ends because they spent elsewhere. So I would say that guys like Njoku, depends. If they fall in the draft, I'll take them. Otherwise, probably not. In terms of tight ends, I'm targeting in Dynasty. He's definitely not one of them. Right now, looking at some ADP, at Fryermuth is probably the best value I see, kind of, other than Kyle Pitts himself, who is still very undervalued. But that's more of a long-term situation. But yeah, I guess I don't know what you can get. No, but I don't feel like really anyone is buying. But I don't really feel like anyone is selling. I never see him moved. I don't think I've seen Njoku moved.
And the people,
he did ask,
the people that believe in Njoku already have him, right? And they've just been sitting on him.
100%. And he did ask the question in the form of if you're rebuilding team. So if you're rebuilding team, you're trading any asset that you possibly can. And so Njoku is someone it's just, I don't know who's buying Njoku and what they're paying. You're probably going to have to look for future picks. Find a team, do an inventory of your league and see which teams don't have a tight end. Maybe Njoku can be the gap for someone that drafts a Dalton Kincaid or drafts a Michael Mayer. But you want to try to trade every piece if you're rebuilding. That is, except for maybe your Garrett Wilsons and Chris Olaves.
Yeah, let's see. We never know for sure, but we kind of know. Yeah, I love that. Ed is very supportive. And I appreciate Ed and all of my longtime supporters, because without you, there would be no YouTube channel. I always say we need to appreciate the things that we have because we never know when they're going to go away. We'll have to see. I say this every show. I say this, that the YouTube channel, we'll have to see. You never know. It's tough. It's hard. It's hard for me. It's something I don't think I talk about much on the show. It's difficult. I have to be in the right mindset. If I'm writing an article and I'm kind of off when I'm writing it, you'll never know. On Twitter, you'll never know. But on YouTube, you'll see it. So it's like, that's why the live shows are tough, and they've definitely been wearing on me. It's part of the reason why the show's being kept.
I think you're taking the right approach in terms of like, hey, you're still building this. Try as many different things as possible, and what works, keep it, and what doesn't work, get rid of it, and just keep trying new stuff, man. I mean, like I've seen a lot of guys. Pete Overzet, another Boston guy, he's tried a million different things before he got things to stick, and now he's got some great things that did stick. So just keep trying different things, man. Like looks like you got a lot of things you do like. This thing maybe not one you don't like, but hey, at least you tried it. At least you tried it, because you never know.
Yeah, I think that it's just it's tough. It's tough. It's hard. It's hard. It's been an interesting year, and we'll see. We will see. I think the one thing people should wait for is the Tyler Tell-All book. That's not in there. That'll be interesting.
Is that in the works?
I can't confirm or deny it. I can't confirm or deny if that may or may not be in the works. We'll have to see. But it's something I'm definitely considering. There's a lot to talk about.
Not flannel, though.
No, definitely not that. Unless it's talking about putting it in a bonfire. Oh, Toronto Dave, I love you.
TD's, man.
Yeah, no, I love you. Yeah. All right. I think did I see this on Twitter earlier? Not sure, but whether it's repeat or not. 1 QB traded Jameson Williams, and a late 24 first for Olave. Well, it's 1 QB, so I will take Olave. If it were super flex, I get it more because late, who knows what could happen? Quarterbacks push up the board. If you're really confident it would be late, I'd still take Olave even in a super flex, but there's more to think about. And a 1 QB, really not much to think about there. So it's Olave easily.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. With JMO, we don't even know what his role is going to end up being. I like the player still, but too much, like we already know Olave's got his role locked in, right?
So Jameson Williams for me is kind of a very bizarre player that it feels, or at least it's felt to me that like nobody has my opinion on Jameson Williams. Like anytime I talk about him, people are either like, you're crazy, you're have him way too high for someone who did absolutely nothing as a rookie, or you're crazy, he should be a top 10 dynasty wide receiver, why don't you have him there? And I'm like, I don't know. I find it kind of strange.
My question with that trade is like, I agree. I want that Olave side, especially in a 1 QB that projected late 24 first. But do you even think you need to pay JMO in a 24 first to get Olave? Like yeah. I saw it and I think it really heavily depends on who, like you said, someone's valuation of JMO, because if he's anywhere, near what he should be, like I think that's probably an overpay. But at the same time, he's just such a question mark. He missed basically the entire year. But were we wrong when a lot of people had him as their number one wide receiver still coming out? Like that we're 1 year removed from that, basically, that a lot of people did have him up there, even with his injury. Just the potential, the upside is very evident there. He caught 2 passes and they're both touchdowns or whatever, like one end around and
one rush. Yeah. Every time he got the ball, every time the ball got into his hands, it was 40 yards, but it didn't happen quite often.
I think he got 1 or 2 called back too, even. So
I think it's interesting looking at the last year's class versus this year's class. I mean, you saw even Williams coming off an ACL injury, wasn't able to participate in any of the offseason workouts or the pre-combine stuff or the pre-NFL draft stuff. Still got early first-round draft capital. They're coming out today, and I heard on Move the Sticks last week that maybe none of these wide receivers in 2023 class are wide receiver ones, and only JSN is getting round 1 grades. And so for everyone that doesn't follow a lot of like the football podcast, there's 32 picks usually. To this year's are 31. Generally, there's not 32 first-round grades. Like there's
usually about 20.
Yeah, usually it's about 20. And so, like, you look at this class, JSN's the only one that's getting wide receiver 1 grades, and he may not even be getting wide receiver 1, round 1 grades from people. When you look at Jameson Williams, Jahan Dotson, and some of these other guys, like, how do you guys compare them to this class? Because you're looking at picks, and like they're old news now. You drove them off the lot, and so now people are looking to sell those guys for these new shiny rookies. Are you trying to take advantage of that?
Well, I think that we have the opposite situation between last year and this year. Last year was a class that the NFL liked a lot more than the Dynasty community. This year, I think we have the opposite. I think the outside, well, depends on the position. At quarterback, I feel like it's kind of up in the air. Tight end, I think the NFL likes significantly more than we're going to like for fantasy. But at wide receiver and running back, I think we like those positions a lot more than the NFL is going to. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all boils out in terms of how draft capital works. Because we know that draft capital is king. And it always will be, because it's the one time of the year that the NFL can't lie. That they can't lie about how much they like a player. They have to tell you the truth. So yeah, we'll see. It's gonna be interesting.
It's gonna be real funny when there's like 4 or 5 first round tight ends and 2 total running backs and wide receivers combined in the first round.
Right.
But like that's what it's going along with what you said. Like the NFL clearly really likes this, and we've heard about I feel like I hear it all the time. This tight end class, and there are certainly some names that I do think we're going to be surprised if they, make it into the end of round 1. Like we might not have seen it like that. We know how deep and talented the class is, but I still think there are going to be some surprises where, one guy that we didn't really think was in that top 4 or 5 tight ends just all of a sudden goes in that back end of the first round, So it's going to be interesting to see.
If it does happen, I just hope it's one of the athletic guys. Like I hope it's like a Sam Laporta or a Zach Zach Kuntz or somebody like that, because then we can look at it from a dynasty perspective and say, okay, we like this guy athletically and the league likes him. So now it's nice. It's when it's the other guys, when it's Drew Sample that goes in the second round.
Exactly.
And then you're like, then we have to make sure all of our followers don't chase after a blocking tight end or something like that. So yeah, I could see that happening, Conan, 100%. And again, to Tyler's point, like, we like our running backs in this class, but the NFL doesn't even like running backs at all, or only a handful of teams are willing to pay up for them. So it's tough to decipher that. If no wide receivers go in the first round and only Bijan goes in the first round for a running back, we're going to have a lot to sort through for Dynasty.
I will say this, like, Darnell Washington and Luke Musgrave are going to get similar, if not better, draft capital than Trey McBride got last year. But they're going to be drafted lower because they're going to be the tight end 3 and 4 in the class. They're going to be the real values.
Right.
I'll say that.
That was a name I don't think we really hear in circles as like maybe a top 4 or 5 guy. But Luke Musgrave, I feel like I've heard a lot more, things coming out that teams really like him and he could really sneak into the back end of the first round. Like, don't be surprised if he's, early day 2 pick, whatever. And I think it's, like, it makes sense. Like, I understand the positional, value. Like, I was reading a very interesting article about just the surplus money that you kind of get into if you nail a pick at an actual, position that the high end is getting $40-50 million a year. You nail one of those, you have 3-4 years of an extra 40 mil, 50-45 mil. And it's like, yeah, you can hit and get someone like, a running back, a wide receiver, and you really, really hit top end guy, but that's still, you're creating an extra 20, 25 mil if you hit
it was
like that. So
it was move the sticks, and they were talking about, like, specifically like Saquon Barkley versus Nick Bosa. So Saquon Barkley, franchise tag, $12 million. Nick Bosa, he's getting, those guys are getting $20-25 million. And so, like, they both were picked number 2 in consecutive years. And so you're getting so much more money saved by taking those, like, premium positions, whether it's left tackle, whether it's defensive end, now receiver and corner are kind of getting in that area, obviously quarterback. But yeah, you're saving a whole bunch of money. You can use it on sprinkle it on the roster on a yearly basis by not wasting it on something. And back to the running backs, there's so many of them, and there's so many that are, like, clumped together that they're going to push each other down the board. And it's going to hurt that draft capital when you have guys that are drafted in the 4th and 5th round that they're good running backs, but because that they're so close together with the other guys, teams are just I'm going to wait till next round and take one of these other guys. And then you're going to see probably more day 3 running backs this year that some people have in their top 4 dynasty rankings.
It's why I don't believe that 4 tight ends and 1 wide receiver are going to go in the first round, because that's just not possible. Why would you do it? The tight end franchise tag number is 11.35 million. That's the average of the top 5 tight end payments. That's not that much. Running back is even less. It's 10.09. Every other position is 14 million or more. And outside of safety, all the other positions are 18 million or more. So the value of taking a running back or tight end in round 1, those are the cheapest positions to get elsewhere.
Yep.
Whereas wide receiver and quarterback, wide receiver is up there with actually everything else. It's right in the middle of defensive end and linebacker. Linebacker is actually the second highest franchise tag. But wide receiver is right in the mix of every position other than quarterback.
Yeah, it's
expensive.
It's like when the Bears traded, the Bears actually got, pick 32 for Chase Claypool.
That was terrible. Yeah.
And you're looking at, like, from a financial standpoint, that was such a bad trade. Not just on face value with the player, but financially.
Yeah, but it's why more than 1 wide receiver is going to go in round 1, even if they don't have a first round grade. And I do not believe that 4 tight ends are going to go in round 1 either.
No, maybe 1 or 2.
That makes no sense. I would say that I think 4 wide receivers are going to go in round 1. Just because of how much wide receiver costs to replace. It's very difficult. It's very expensive. And we've seen that even mediocre Allen Lazard and Jacoby Myers are not cheap. Right. Allen Lazard and Jacoby Myers are getting what equivalent of a high-end running back contract would be.
It's literally exactly what the tight end franchise tag is. 11 million, right? Like, and that's why every tight end that's even decent just gets tagged, or they pick up a 5th-year option, because it's like, why not just keep Mike Gesicki? They didn't even use him, but like, why not keep Evan Ingram? Like, what does Jacoby Myers do that Evan Ingram can't do? You know, Evan Ingram probably a little bit better blocker, Myers better receiver, but at the end of the day, it's a slot guy, you know?
Yeah. I would just say that, so I wouldn't believe those who say that there's only going to be one wide receiver drafted in round 1. I'm pretty confident that there's going to be 4. And I do think it's going to be exactly 4. I think it's going to be exactly 4. JSN, Johnston, Addison, and Zay Flowers.
I wonder what the over-under is. I wonder if you can take some action on that. There's usually prop bets for that. Like last year, it was over-under 4.5 wide cornerbacks taken, and 4 got taken.
I'm going to write an article on that. And I've been looking at those. Before it was 2.5, but last time I looked was like a month ago. So I'd say it's probably that 2.5.
I would take the over on that for sure.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to fall in like 3.5, because I do think those 3 guys, I would say Flowers at 3, but Johnson's in the conversation.
Yeah, especially when you look at like the teams that are picking towards the end there. I mean, like, if you're the Buffalo Bills, like, are you really going to sit there and let the 2nd or 3rd best wide receiver from this class go by you at 27? I think that team, of all the teams, I wouldn't feel good about bringing the same team to the tournament again this year that they brought last year, which is almost what they're doing.
Yep. I'll say that there's just so many teams that could take a wide receiver like in the 20s that it's hard for me to imagine that 3. I think JSN will be taken first, and I think he'll go probably to. I don't think JSN is going to get past Houston at 12. I think that he'll either go before that, or Houston at 12 will take him.
And he's not going to get past. Look at 14-15 is Patriots Packers. Do you think those teams could pass on a guy like that? Like, no way. It won't
matter because he's not going to get past 12. The interesting thing, I think, is if JSN goes before Houston at 12, does Houston at 12 reach for? I've seen that a lot in mock drafts, them reaching for Quentin Johnston, and I don't know if they would do that, but I think that's really what's going to kind of decide the makeup of the draft and how people feel about wide receivers. Because after Houston at 12, there's a lot of teams that, like, yes, they could take one, but they don't have to. Then we get to, teams that I always circle anytime Baltimore comes on the clock. I always think they're going to take a wide receiver, because you saw what they had to do. They had to pay someone $10 million more than he's worth to get anyone to come there. Is someone who's old, overpaid, and washed up, to overpay him $10 million to get him to come to that kind of run-heavy offense. So the only way they're going to get anyone is to draft them when they have no choice but to play there. So I always concern, every mock I've seen has Baltimore taking a wide receiver in this draft. Let's see if that changes. That's maybe less likely, but before OBJ, it was pretty much every mock had them taking wide receiver at 22. So we'll see what happens now, but
it'll be a little different with Todd Monken versus Greg Roman.
Not for me. It's not going to change enough. To me, Lamar, it kind of is what he is. I mean, Lamar, I don't know. I mean, Jalen Hurts was a better passer than Lamar in college. I mean, Jalen Hurts was actually a pretty good passer in college. And he still is just not going to deliver more than 3,500 passing yards. Lamar had the one season where he had like the touchdown efficiency of all time. I get it. He's a good player, but that is an outlier for anybody, let alone him. That's not going to happen again. That was a once in a lifetime happening in 2019. That is not going to happen again.
Yeah. I wonder if that's part of this whole thing, is that Todd Monken, like, if you listen to what he says, he's like, my background's quarterbacks, my background's wide receivers. I want to throw. I wonder if they honestly, truly just want to get a different quarterback in to run the air raid. Because I don't know, even if you think Lamar Jackson's a good player, I'm with you. I'm not sure if he jives with what Todd Monken wants to do. Right.
I think he could run an offense like what Jalen Hurts ran, with a little bit more running and a little bit less passing. There's no AJ Brown. That's going to be a little bit of a problem. I mean, there's no AJ Brown. The offense is not going to be as good. I just think that the ceiling is what? I mean, 3,500 passing yards, maybe 3,700 at best. I don't know. I mean, I just am not. That's why I always mock receivers to Baltimore, because it's the only way they're going to get them. Nobody's going to voluntarily go there.
I don't disagree with that, but I think there needs to be something looked at with the change. It's Greg Roman's offense compared to Monken's
Totally,
offense.
yeah. It is different offense for sure.
It's very different.
It just is what it is. I mean, Lamar Jackson is not going to stop running, and we know that quarterback running crushes everyone else there. Outside of the one thing it helps is running backs running the ball do better at running it, not catching passes, because those don't exist with a running quarterback, but running the ball. Running backs do really well. I mean, Miles Sanders opened up. Everything was opened on the ground with Jalen Hurts as a threat. Totally was opened, and unlocked some rushing efficiency. J.K. Dobbins has shown similarly rushing efficiency, not catching, but rushing efficiency, despite being hurt. Was able to maybe succeed where he would not have this year at times because the lanes were so wide open with Lamar as a threat. He just walked right through them. Makes it easy. But yeah, I mean, Lamar's
to your point, though,
best ever passing performance is 3,127 yards. That's best ever in 15 games, 208 and then yards a game. And then 2021 was his best yards per game. He had 240. So that was not terrible.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely helps yards per carry, but it crushes. Like in fantasy football, we need more than that, right? Like absolutely. You said with Miles Sanders, you can't have Jalen Hurts. He had the second most carries inside the 5 behind only Jamal Williams. Like that is gonna, like, just imagine what Miles Sanders could have been. And I actually kind of like Miles Sanders now, even though he'll probably be less efficient. At least now he'll catch passes out of the backfield. He'll get more goal line carries if that team kind of hits on the quarterback. But I think for the long term for Miles Sanders, this move is probably better for him for fantasy football at least.
This is when you sell the running back. You never, ever, ever want these. Once the running back signs, this is the time. They sign the big second contract, gone. That's the time, especially someone who's mediocre. Miles Sanders is mediocre. Elite maybe, but he's mediocre. It's time. This is a good time to sell. Because there are people saying that.
Yeah. If he were going to an offense that was established now and could put him in a position to score double-digit touchdowns, then maybe. But yeah, they're going to have a rookie quarterback. So
it just doesn't matter. He's 26, signing a second contract. By next year, I guarantee you that he's going to be worth a lot less than he is now. So it's a time to sell. None of it matters. None of it matters. What offense, how good he is, nothing. He's going to lose value even if he has a great season.
I mean, at some point you have to try and win your league too, though.
Yeah, but that's if he. Well, you don't need Miles Sanders to win your league.
You don't need any individual player.
Yeah, I always suggest trying to get running backs who are elite earlier in the value curve, and then winning with those guys, and then recycling them when they get to the end of the value curve.
So, like a Christian McCaffrey, you'd be looking to trade a guy like that.
Oh, I've been looking to trade Christian McCaffrey for a long time. But yes. Christian McCaffrey, the reason I was looking to trade him is what you could get. There was a time where you could get like a young stud wide receiver and a first round pick. I mean, there was a time where, you could get like elite wide receivers or an elite quarterback in Superflex and something else for Christian McCaffrey. So
I don't know what you're talking about. There's a time I saw you answer one of your
today there was still a time. Yeah,
they sold CMC for 2 firsts, Aaron Jones, and another receiver or something. I was like,
yeah, I think.
Oh my goodness, like
I think
I forget
it
who
was.
it was.
Was it Amon Ra? It was Amon Ra. There was a couple firsts.
2 firsts.
It was some ridiculous,
even and another player or two just for CMC, and I'm like, if people are still paying that,
people wonder why I say sell running backs, and then they look at trades like this, and then they don't want
a trade like that. It's like, I mean, he might not even be making his lineup worse. Like a lot of times when you do the CMC trade, you trade him for picks, and you're making your lineup worse for the short term. But if you're getting back Amon Ra and Aaron Jones, you might not even be making your overall lineup worse. So that move, that makes no sense.
That sounds like an outlier. That's a pretty.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I just worry. What I worry about is that, like, when I'm trying to, like, if I'm in a position to win my league, I don't like to do too many trades that are going to make my team worse. Just if, like, if I can win this year with a team with Christian McCaffrey, I'll probably just try and win. But if he's like one of my only good players, then yeah, give me the picks and I'll try and win later.
Yeah, I got an Austin Eckler price check going on right now, and so Eckler is coming at the 107. So to replace those points, 107, it's going to be very hard to replace those points for someone like Austin Eckler. So if you're a competing team, you're making your team worse. If you're a rebuilding team, that's easy. You can make the deal. But
I'll make my team worse, even if it's hard for me to even say it because I'll never have Austin Eckler. Like, how could I have Austin Eckler?
If you already had him.
Well, but that's not realistic. Like, as in, there is no way I have Austin Eckler.
But people do.
People do. But it gets to a point where if you were, it happens because I inherit new people on my Patreon or asking me questions on Twitter, especially on Patreon. I inherit teams where they're asking me to help them and they have done things that I wouldn't have done. But it is literally impossible. There's no way a team I ran from the beginning would have Austin Eckler. There would be no Austin Eckler on those teams. I have none.
Well, the question is really for people listening and not necessarily for your individual team.
Right.
Well, no, the point of that though is that if you this was a plug. If you sign up for my Patreon, you won't have to worry about trying to trade Austin Eckler now because you've already gotten rid of him at a higher price.
People that had Austin Eckler last year were probably pretty happy. I mean, he scored like 6 touchdowns during fantasy playoffs.
Oh, I mean, you had a while to sell him this offseason, though, before this news hit. I mean, I was saying, people always say hold on to veterans, and I'm always like, no, bad things can happen, like this trade mess, and we don't want him to go to another team. I mean, what's going to be better than an elite quarterback who doesn't run that much, who throws the ball to him accurately and all the time? I mean, nothing is going to be better. No other situation. There's no improvement. Any trade is bad.
Yeah,
So
and I'm honestly a little worried about Joe Lombardi being gone too, because
he was a horrible and incompetent offensive coordinator. So we'll see.
He was the reason they dumped it down so much. I mean, he's the guy that loves that.
Well, I mean, we'll have to see. I mean, he was horrible and incompetent. So I'm hoping that overall it makes it better. But, Kellen Moore, not exactly a dump off artist, but, well, that's actually not true. Zeke actually had a lot more receptions than a lot of people think, despite being bad at it. Despite being a 0 in the receiving game, not a 0, but average, nothing special. He actually had a lot more receptions over the years than people probably would remember. So I don't know. We'll have to see. But Joe Lombardi was one of the most incompetent coaches that I've ever seen. So incompetent. I mean, I did a whole video on his incompetence, and then there was a 7-minute segment on another video about how incompetent he was. And there were so many things where he was a big failure. So I don't see it as a negative. I like removing failure.
Yeah.
I was very bad.
I was looking at the other day in terms of the dump downs. It took all the quarterbacks sorted by whoever threw over 150 passes. So anybody that played, at least a handful of games. There were 40 players threw 150 passes. Justin Herbert ranked 38th in ADOT, 6.9 yards. So that was like dump down city. I know they had injuries to Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, but
it was mostly his injuries though. Herbert couldn't throw the ball downfield.
Right. So this year I expect them to be pushing the ball a little more. They have to.
But Austin Eckler was still good even in the years where Herbert pushed the ball down the field.
Right. Austin Eckler's he's been a great fantasy asset.
That's why this trade thing is so bad, because if he leaves, it's not a little decline in value. It's like the end of the world. It's the end of the world. For most teams. I mean, there's like maybe 2 teams. One of them is the Chiefs, which he's not going to. So like, there's like most teams are like, especially the ones being rumored. Washington, like the end of the world. I mean, Austin Eckler would lose over half his value if he went there.
Agree.
Would you trade Bateman and the 309 for Elijah Moore and Jalen Warren? Oh, this is one of my who cares trades.
He's basically Bateman for Elijah Moore. Because what are you doing with Jalen Warren?
I mean, I'd probably rather sit on Jalen Warren, who's a running back who showed something in the NFL over 309, which I don't want. But
if you were sitting at 309 and someone dropped Jalen Warren to waivers, would you use the 309 to pick Jalen Warren? I'm just not sure. I don't know if I would.
Because the odds of getting a running back at that late who has actually shown something in the NFL is, I mean, a lot of those picks in the 3rd round are nothing at all. Jalen Warren is at least shown something. So, no, I have Jalen Warren. So it's a 10-team 309. So that's 29th overall, which is equivalent to 305. I have Jalen Warren even in the worst format for his value in Superflex is equivalent to the 303. So a little bit more. And then, but in terms of the players, I'd rather have Elijah Moore. I'd rather have Elijah Moore. Rashad Bateman is just sucks. It sucks, but he is one first-round pick at 22 overall from being just dead in the water. Like, he's already dead in the water, but being, like, completely gone. I mean, he's had 2 seasons, done nothing at all, and spent a lot of it being injured. The track record of those players succeeding is nothing. Is nothing, essentially. Those players are like 80, 90% out of the league at the end of their rookie contract. So, or career backups, Nelson Aguilar, the same player from the same team. Just does not tend to be a successful pattern of players. So Rashad Bateman, Elijah Moore has shown more than Rashad Bateman. Elijah Moore at least had a stretch of being elite. Rashad Bateman has never had even a stretch of being okay. So, yeah, I'll have to go with the Elijah Moore side.
I think I'm there with you. I mean, I actually kind of liked what I think Jalen Warren is one of those guys I would happily throw a late third for, just because the team wanted to get him out there sometimes, even when they spent a first round pick and have a workhorse back. It's like they still wanted him out there on some passing downs. Like he earned his way onto the field. And I mean, I think as just like someone that's done something in their first year behind someone that highly coveted in front of him. I mean, I think he's a good kind of stash away, like kind of backup handcuff kind of guy. And I just don't see anyone at like that 309 that I really prefer.
Yeah, if he's got Najee Harris, that makes it even better. Because we got on the field, Najee Harris was dealing with a foot injury for most of the year. And his he looked a lot better when he got that plate removed from his foot, from his shoe. Sorry. But as far as Elijah Moore, I agree. I'll take Elijah Moore. I like the situation better. You know what he's got? They're married to Deshaun Watson. We don't know if they're even engaged to Lamar Jackson and what that situation is going to look like. We talked about it earlier. They could end up getting it. And that's what I was alluding to. I think they could get a different quarterback, and teams may approach Lamar Jackson after the draft, because then if you do sign Lamar Jackson, you're going to spend future picks and not, the Indianapolis Colts aren't going to spend pick 4 on him. Does that happen? I think most likely chance he goes back to Baltimore. But if teams do approach Lamar Jackson, it's going to happen after the draft. And then there's teams that don't have first round picks that can join the party as well. But like you look at a team like Washington, you look at a team like Tampa Bay or Miami, they could be more likely after that. But I'll take Elijah Moore.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Elijah Moore, he just short term at the very least has more upside because he's in an offense with that seems to want to have him there, that has a better quarterback situation. Bateman, he really needs like the Todd Monken air raid situation to pan out over the long term. And as Tyler kind of said, for it to even have that kind of upside, they might need to find a different quarterback at some point. So it's a lot needs to break right for Bateman compared to Moore right now.
Yeah. Also, the Browns don't have a first round pick or a second round pick. They could take a wide receiver in the 3rd round, but I'm not as worried about that. And that's also not a guarantee. Whereas the Ravens have a possibility of significantly hurting Rashad Bateman's value over the next few weeks. So, and that makes it even easier to take Elijah Moore. All right. Muth and 202 or Ayuk in a 1 QB? That seems about right. I think Pat Freiermuth is a buy. I'll take Pat Freiermuth and the pick. Ayuk, he's again kind of like Jerry Jeudy. He's good, just good, not great. Tight ends are hard to replace. I mean, the 202, Ayuk is worth more, but the 202 is enough. It'll be something decent. This is a deep class. It'll be something decent. So that'll be enough to make me go with the Freiermuth side.
Yeah, a lot of target competition for Ayuk all of a sudden with, CMC and Kittle and Debo and who knows playing quarterback. So, I mean, Muth to me is more of a stash if possible, just because, again, with him, quarterback questions and Deontay Johnson and, George Pickens. But I just think that I'm with you that there's not enough good tight ends that we can bank on long term, that I'd just rather have that and then take another stab at 202. And maybe you get an Ayuk. That's kind of where Ayuk got drafted in dynasty drafts anyway.
He wasn't even that high, I don't think.
He was the first. It's all dependent on how your league mates play, because he got picked in the first round. So in some of my leagues, people are just like, "Oh, first round player, I'm going to take him no matter what." John Ross, doesn't matter who it is. And then some of my leagues that are a little sharper, Ayuk was going a lot later. But some guys in my league literally just sit there and go, "Oh, this guy got picked in the first round. Well, I'm going to take him at 7." So
yeah. Well,
and it's one quarterback.
And I think you definitely. I think the next thing is, am I the only one super excited about Pat Freiermuth? Very good 2 years, and I think that's kind of gone under the radar how good he's actually been. Like he may not have been like a fantasy stud his first 2 years, but he's a tight end that's caught 60 passes each season. He's caught 123 balls through his first 2 years. Let me read you some of the guys right around him that did that in their first 2 years. We got Gronk, Kittle, Jimmy Graham, Aaron Hernandez, Jason Witten, Jeremy Shockey. Like only the best of the best seem to have done something like that, So it's just, I do think he's someone that I am seeing the value on. Like he's not going inside like the top 5 tight ends in terms of dynasty and stuff like that right now. So I like that side. I do think like Ayuk is a better football player than he is a fantasy asset. Like I think he's very good, but it doesn't seem like it's going to really line up like it did for him at the back end of his, I think, rookie year when he was on just a scorching hot pace. And I think that definitely was more so related to kind of the opportunity, the lack of, weapons, injuries, stuff like that. No, don't get me wrong. He still had to earn those targets, but it just seems like one of those situations where the other supporting cast around him and just that whole, the team and the opportunities there, like it just doesn't seem like he's going to be able to reach that high upside.
Exactly. I just wrote an article on this exact topic for Dynasty tight end system. I call it the SORT system, and it's the simplest thing ever. SORT. SORT, start, opportunity, roster, talent. You want to roster as many guys you believe in as possible, long-term talent. Guys like Greg Dulcich, Trey McBride, Pat Freiermuth. But if you're competing to win now, you might need to go out and trade for someone that has the opportunity to have high-end upside. So sometimes, I've seen guys in my league, like this one specific example where a guy had a loaded team, and a lot of times in Dynasty, all the teams that are competing are loaded at every position. This kid had a loaded team all year long. He was steamrolling. His tight ends were, at the time, 2020, Dallas Goedert and Jonnu Smith, who at the time, we were like waiting for them to be the guy. But Zach Ertz was still there, and Jonnu was doing whatever it was Jonnu does, which is apparently not a whole lot. But we're just waiting for him to do something. Meanwhile, that kid comes in third place. The 2 kids playing in the championship, their starting tight ends were Robert Tonyan, who scored a touchdown every single day, and the other kid had Logan Thomas, who came out of nowhere to be the tight end 3. So sometimes you have to go out, and if you're competing now, and every team at the top is good at every position, sometimes you might have to sacrifice some of that talent for opportunity right now if you want to win. Obviously you want to try and thread the needle with guys that are both talented and have opportunity, Kelsey, Pitts, Hawkinson, Andrews, those type guys, but sometimes you have to just sell out. Like you might have to go for a Darren Waller or a Dalton Schultz if they're going to be a top target on their team, instead of waiting for Dulcich or waiting for Freiermuth. So these are the decisions sometimes you have to make. I'd rather win now than lose because I thought I might be able to win 4 times in a row later.
Absolutely. No, I'm right there with you. But I understand, Dave, you gotta head out. I know you've been here before, but do you want to let the people know what you've been up to? Anything you want to plug?
Just sportsgamblingpodcast.com, SGPN Fantasy on YouTube, and then you follow me on TikTok, or Twitter at Dynasty Dorks. Appreciate the invite, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks for coming on.
Have a good one.
Later, buddy. Good to see you, man. Yeah, I just realized it's after 3, man. The time flies, dude. I got to roll myself.
These shows are usually multiple hours. But yeah, plug your stuff too. And then Conan and I will wrap up.
Yeah, so I'm over Fantasy Alarm, all my written stuff. Pretty easy to find. Just type Andrew Cooper Fantasy Alarm. I tweet it out anyway, so at Coupe Fiasco on Twitter, easiest way to find my stuff. And then we've got a show every Wednesday on Better Sports Network. It's going to be at noon. Me and John and Pemba pop in the chat, hang out. We're getting ready for the draft, man. So just like everybody else. But thanks again for having me on, man. Good times.
Yeah,
absolutely. Great to have
Cheers.
you.
And Conan, go Bruins. Let's go, baby. Let's get that cup.
Absolutely.
Cheers, guys.
Have a good one.
All right. Well, it's this hasn't happened in a while. It's just the two of us left. But that's okay. People need to get used to this because this is what it's gonna be like.
Absolutely. I think we just about covered the rest of this question, talked about Muth a little bit, and then I see another, next question I see is, I think I know your answer.
Yeah. Well,
it's a classic off season though, Yeah. It's this guy trains with someone, and all of a sudden people are going crazy. Hopefully not actually taking any action on it in fantasy, but you can be a little excited, but not really do anything about it. And are they worth rostering? Probably not.
Yeah. They're not worth rostering.
Yeah.
Justin Ross and Trey Sermon are a waste of your time and mine. They're not worth rostering.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're still here, get in your questions because I think we're gonna wrap up when we get to the bottom of the chat. So if you want us to take your questions, make sure to get them in. And while we're talking about that, if you're here, make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell. To be notified about all our future content with those videos that Conan and I are going to do. They're not going to have as consistent of a drop time, especially if we're recording multiple at once. I'm going to kind of decide based on what we do, how I want to space that out. So it's very important to hit that notifications bell so you can be notified about the content that we're making. The Tuesday show will continue at 7:30 p.m. Eastern every week. That show is going to continue. If anything, it'll probably be a little bit longer since it'll be the only live show that I'm doing. And then Ask Tyler, this show, what will happen is that questions will be sourced from Twitter. And I will do, if you've watched the Patreon question shows, those questions are sourced from the Patreon, where in my Patreon Discord, I take those questions. And here's the link to that. Yeah, so if you want to ask questions for the Patreon show, you can get them in on Patreon. But the Ask Tyler show is going to be similar format, just with questions from Twitter. So everyone will be able to ask questions, whether or not you can make it live, and we'll see. I'll do it solo. It'll be about 20 minutes, and that'll be the future of this show. So we'll have a lot of variety of content, and you can also, the Makeshift Managers are doing their podcast on my channel, so you have that too. So actually going to be a lot more content than there was before. But yeah, these live shows, sometimes I'm just not feeling it, or I'm tired, and it's hard enough for me to get up the energy once per week for 2 hours, but trying to do it twice is, I think, asking a lot and isn't working. So yeah,
absolutely.
12 team Superflex, start 10, 1.5 PPR startup. I have the 10th pick. Do I take Lamar or Fields if available? What would you do? Or maybe Watson?
Yeah, they said, or maybe Watson. I mean, this one's tough. I have those 3 quarterbacks back to back in my Dynasty quarterback rankings right now. I do have, I have Lamar, Fields, then Watson in that order. But, every day I'm kind of souring a little bit on Lamar. I do still think I would go with him, but I don't really think I would fault you at all if you wanted to go Fields, if you wanted to go Watson. I think you're basically getting right into the back end of that elite quarterback tier, and you do definitely want at least one of these guys. Yeah, it's tough. And I do think I've been in this spot, and I have picked Lamar in this spot probably once or twice.
I'm starting to run from Lamar. I actually just traded Lamar. People aren't gonna like it. I traded Lamar and Tyler Huntley for the 103 and a 25 first. Seems light, but I'm just tired of Lamar. I'm not interested.
That's
in
fair.
doing
I mean, I
it
do
anymore.
think I won't be surprised if I have Fields flipped with Lamar come a couple weeks from now.
Yeah, I have Fields
even
higher.
Watson ahead of him.
I would take Fields,
Okay, yeah, and I
not
think
Watson.
not Watson, but I do have him behind these two, with Kyler Murray kind of in between there. But I don't know how with his injury too.
Yeah. Is KJ Osborne worth a roster spot? 10-team roster, 20 taxi 5. Yes, he's worth a roster spot. He doesn't have a lot of value. He's worth a roster spot.
Absolutely.
Kyle Pitts or TJ Hawkinson, George Pickens, and Deonta Foreman.
I don't know. I mean, I loved what we saw out of. Well, obviously, TJ Hawkinson was just like a volume hog last year, but George Pickens is someone I think we love the highlight reel catches, some of what he brings to tape. But I'm definitely worried a little bit about just that sheer ability to draw targets. Like if you look at his game logs last year, he never really had that many games with high target rate. Especially we're looking at guys like Pat Freiermuth, Deontay Johnson that also each kind of demand a good amount of targets there. So I do think I'm probably taking. It's tough because you're getting. I mean, I don't think Deontay Foreman really matters much in this.
Not much
in this
no.
trade. So you're basically looking at Pitts or Hawkinson and Pickens. I've been disappointed by Pitts, but I still do think I want to believe in him. And if you can kind of get him without, mortgaging some of your firsts and later future assets, I'm okay with that. So I think I would take the Kyle Pitts side.
Yeah, I'd lean Kyle Pitts as well, but I really do love George Pickens. It is close. Toronto Dave appreciates the thorough answers. Yes, I will say when I'm solo, I actually answer the questions in detail without going off topic. So no, I feel bad. I really do think while some of the guests are okay with it, I do bring on guests and then just torpedo them a lot of the time. And it's just like, I think it's, I think I'm going to call the show Ask Tyler. Should be Ask Tyler.
Fair enough.
It used to be Ask DLF. And that was like, people liked it. Like it was really a collaboration between me, Addison, and Cal. But these shows are really just me answering the questions and letting other people talk when I feel like it, which is it's not good. And I think it's okay. People like it. It's hit or miss. Depends on who I have on the show, but depends on how I'm feeling that day. But yeah, I think people have loved the Patreon solo shows because the biggest negative feedback I get is that I interrupt people. And if I'm the only person there's no one to interrupt. No one for me to talk over.
That's true.
And there's no tangents. There's no delays. There's no nonsense.
No fantasy football only fans talk.
No fantasy football only fans. The people who are really into actually having the questions answered in detail love the shows. The people who are more into Tyler's nonsense, that show's not for them, but that's why I'm going to have both. Still going to have the Tuesday live stream. Then we're going to have the solo shows are going to be more serious, more answering the questions. And then we're going to have our shows that are going to be a variety of topics that are probably stuff I wouldn't do on my own.
Absolutely.
And I also feel like you'll get less lost in the shuffle than sometimes you get on these shows. I feel bad.
No worries.
We don't hear from you.
I'm excited. I'm excited about
the people. The people want more of you because your Twitter threads get so much interaction.
Yeah, definitely slowed down a little bit in the off season. I do want to get it going more, as we get gearing toward the NFL draft, and more so some, the fantasy season, quote unquote, where, not just the diehard obsessed guy
Yeah.
people like us and, a lot of players that play, they're still all here. But I think a bigger wave of just people will come in and just be more excited as the draft happens, as, OTAs start, training camp, just stuff like that starts getting underway. Yeah.
Yeah. I think
Should be fun.
people. Yeah, I do think it's weird because I do a show that's mostly about Dynasty, but I do think I'm on the casual side. I don't have breakdown complicated analytic metrics or detailed film breakdowns. Like I do think I'm on the more casual side for people watching the show. On my Patreon, I'm not. I'm more for serious players who want to ask me questions every day. That's pretty much all diehards. But the show tends to lean, I think, toward the casual side. I agree with this to an extent. For me, yeah, I mean, we'll have to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have like a top 7, 8 kind of blocked in, maybe not in the exact order, and that capital will definitely decide that. But I think after that, I do think it's the draft capital and kind of who you like more.
I think
it's a big group.
Bijan is one.
Similar, yeah.
Then there's in Superflex, there's Stroud, Young, and Richardson. That's going to be 2 through 4.
And then likely JSN.
JSN and Gibbs are going to be the next 2.
Mm-hmm.
The order, I don't think, is decided. I think the Gibbs
Exactly.
JSN is not going to matter, but I think the Gibbs draft capital and landing spot is going to decide whether he's above JSN or not. Specifically, if he goes in round 1 for the Chiefs, I think he will be. But if he goes in round 2, then he probably won't be. And then after that, I think you have Johnston and Addison and Zach Charbonnet are probably the next group. Zay Flowers is like on the edge of that group with Will Levis and Superflex. And Michael Meyer and tight end premium could also mix into that group, depending on his capital. And then you have a massive group after that, including guys like anyone from in 1 QB. I have Devon A-Chain at 8. And I have like Kendre Miller at 21. And if you told me after the NFL draft that those 2 were reversed, it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Exactly.
If their draft capital was reversed, they might be reversed. I expect Devon A-Chain to be late 2nd and Kendre Miller to be early 4th. But if it's the other way around, then I can tell you that Kendre Miller is going to be higher.
Absolutely. I mean, with this big group where we're really not too torn on like who we'd rather have, one or the other, it is going to come down to that landing spot, the draft capital. And I think you're absolutely right that whoever you have right now at the beginning of that next tier of guys that are all in a big group, whoever really gets the best draft capital, a good landing spot, like that's who's likely going to come in at that 109, 110 type landing spot in come rookie drafts.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So let's see. Do you guys find it odd for Bijan to be consistently ranked as the RB1 in Dynasty before being drafted? I think back to Barkley and JT when they were prospects. Don't recall either one being RB1 pre-draft. JT is different. JT is not on the same level. Not on the same level as a prospect. He went in the 2nd round. He was, borderline 1st-round pick throughout the entire process, NFL-wise. He's not on the same level. JT is on the same level as like a Breece Hall type prospect. There are those every year. And JT wasn't even the RB1 in his own class after the rookie draft. Obviously, that's wrong. But
Clyde.
But even throughout the process, there were people who had DeAndre Swift and J.K. Dobbins over JT. There were. So,
yeah, I mean, it is an interesting question in terms of.
But no, I don't find it odd. Saquon Barkley was the RB3 in May 2018 ADP. The reason was because Ezekiel Elliott was RB2 and he was a year and a half older. Todd Gurley was RB1 and he was 2.5 years older. They were both under 24. And they were had elite production already. There is nobody like that now. There is nobody like that who doesn't have concerns. So that's why Bijan is coming in as RB1, because the other players are not quite as good. Bijan's value is not actually going to come in that differently than Saquon Barkley. It's going to be a little higher. But it's not going to be that different. The difference is that there's nobody else.
It is, yeah. I mean, it is all that difference of who is up there in that top 5, and we're looking at guys, Ken Walker, ETN, like Brees Hall, these guys that, yes, very young, but only 1 year of maybe elite production. Whereas, when we're coming in, we're looking at Barkley, there were these guys that had
ETN
at
is more than
least
3
2.
years older than Bijan.
Yeah. And so that
So is JT.
age difference plus, not having produced for as long of a time, not showing more than 1 season. So I think I think Bijan's pretty
The answer to the question is
properly
no, I
placed.
don't find it odd.
Yeah. I think he's that good.
Yeah. The free agency wide receiver class was weak this year, and we haven't seen high-end wide receiver trades this year like last year. I think it's important when we talk about draft capital from this year to last year that we factor that in. I'm going to say no. Draft capital is draft capital. I'm going to say no.
Yeah.
We're not going to factor that in.
I still think the wide receiver class was, yes, it's true, but I still think we're going to see some type of wide receiver trade, like high end, whether it's during the draft
It's
or
just
at some
totally
point in the
irrelevant. It's totally
Yeah,
irrelevant.
but
Like the
that's the
first
thing, I
part
don't
of the
think it
statement has
matters.
nothing to do with the second part. It's totally irrelevant. They have nothing to do with each other. I don't care about the free agent class, high-end wide receiver trades. The draft capital is what it is.
But yeah, because it's basically saying, like, do you want to reach for like wide receivers or something, even with lesser
Wide
draft
receiver
capital,
is not the
because
only
there's not as
position in the
much or something.
NFL.
Yeah. So yeah, no,
Oh,
I don't
what?
really see.
Hi,
see
Patrick.
Well, hello.
You're surprising me.
Let's
I love it.
Hey,
How do I fix that? Yeah, I'm being surprised.
I got out of work early today. Heard you guys talking about free agent wide receivers and wide receiver trades. And yeah, those two main points aren't relevant to each other. We'll see the draft capital come through for a few of these top guys. And we're also talking about last year's trades as if those trades happened in March, early April of last year, which they didn't. A lot of those waited until farther down the line. I think the Tyreek Hill trade, correct me if I'm wrong, was like June. We're going to see those things continue to develop over time as contract renegotiations start happening for these wide receivers entering their 4th, 5th years in the
Tyreek
league.
Hill trade was March, by the way.
Was March? Okay. My bad.
You're all good.
We'll continue to see those things adjusting over time. It's still early in the offseason.
Yeah, there's still time. All right. From Richard, 10-team Superflex tight end premium. I have the 102, 103, 105. QBs are Hurts, Lawrence, Mac Jones, and Lance. Really need a running back. Okay. So essentially, what would you pay to move up from the 102 or 103 to 101? I don't think I would pay a first to move up from those quarterbacks to Bijan, but that's what it's going to cost, so I'm probably not going to do it.
Yeah.
I think that's your answer.
Yeah, I don't want to give up any two of those for the 101. That's for sure. I mean, if you have a quarterback needy team, maybe you can try to dangle someone like the Mac Jones or Trey Lance in addition to one of the picks, but it's one of those spots. You have really good quarterbacks. You have 3 top 5 picks. I don't think you really need to overpay to get Bijan because you need a running back. Like right now is not really the time to go buy a running back because your team is not full and you don't have an RB1. I just don't think that's a move that you need to make.
I definitely agree there. I think there's a lot to be said about you can be an RB needy team and Bijan is not your answer.
That's true. You don't have to. There are other running backs.
You have a chance to walk out of this draft with Hurts, Trevor Lawrence, potentially Trey Lance if he's still the starter, and Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, and then whoever you want at 105.
Yeah.
You are set for the next potentially 6 to 8 years at quarterback. between the combination of those four.
Yeah, I mean, you already got Hurts.
I would much
Trevor
rather go and
Lawrence.
get. If I'm an RB needy team, I'd much rather look a little bit lower in the RB1 rankings and taking someone like go buy a Najee Harris who's undervalued a little bit. If you need to fill in that running back position, and it's going to cost you a whole hell of a lot less than getting Bijan.
I'm good with that. Hey, I'm the guy with Twitter with the Drake London question. So his question was, is it worth trading my 505 and 805 in a 12-team Superflex startup for Drake London? But that is a difficult question to answer without knowing who's available at the 505. In general, though, I would say I have Drake London in a Superflex at 28th overall, so that's 304. Would I trade the 505 and 805 to get 304? Probably not. It's trading 2 for 1 in a startup's usually not great. It's fine, but I don't know.
What about 5 and 10?
That would be better. I would pay that. Yeah.
Right? I think I would try to angle for something like that. Maybe make that second pick a couple rounds later. Then I can see that. But 5 and 8, we're still in a startup. We're still looking at some good guys. So
yeah,
it seems like a little bit much to be paying. I love Drake London.
And let's talk about that. The price is wild. Not for everyone. I saw him sold for Rashad Bateman, a mid-second and a 24-second. So not for everyone.
I'd love to buy Drake London
right?
at that price. Oh my goodness. I mean, what's around his consensus, like wide receiver 10?
Right now I have him wide receiver 11 without rookies.
Okay.
So it'll either be 11 or 12.
Keep Trade Cut has him like wide receiver 12. I was into a discussion about him the other day. And that was with rookies already included, I think. And they were everywhere I looked, I was looking for different ADP for him. It was like anywhere from 10 to 15.
Yeah, so probably JSN is ahead of him.
Yeah, I have him exactly at 12 too.
Yeah, for me, it's possible that JSN could be ahead of him, but I doubt it. What landing spot is he going to get to that makes me prefer JSN over someone who's already done something? I think for JSN to be ahead of him, a team we really like, which is not any of the teams he's currently going to go to, Tennessee, Houston, New England, a team we really like, Chargers, would have to trade up to get him.
Yeah.
I think that might do it. But in the current construction, I don't see it as happening.
Yeah. I mean, he will slot in right in that same range. I agree that it's going to take like a perfect landing spot, a really good landing spot for him to immediately be kind of in that top 10, basically. But I don't think this is necessarily true that his price is wild because, like you said,
it's not everywhere.
Him traded for other things, and that's again, I think that's what Coop was saying. Like that's what makes fantasy football great, and like trades happen. Is that people have different valuations on players, and sometimes they're really crazy and far off that almost everyone agrees one side is better. But a lot of the time you see trades that, you personally might think, oh, what the heck is that? And you go look at some of what other people said, and they're like, it's 50-50. And so, people are saying one way, people are saying the other way. So
for me, looking at JSN for a sec, I have Drake London at 11 and Treylon Burks at 16. I struggle to see a situation where he's going to be above Drake London, and I struggle to see a situation where he's going to be below Treylon Burks. So, the middle of that range is, so he's probably going to be somewhere from 12 to 16 to me. Almost for sure.
Yeah.
If I had to put JSN in right now, I'd put him at 14. But that's just best guess.
Yeah.
Hart from Toronto Dave, thank you. That we talked about. Okay. All right. This question I'm just going to pass on entirely. Sitting at 105, if draft goes chalk, would you prefer JSN or Gibbs for this year as a contender? We talked about this earlier, and I'll say that it depends on the situation. For now, I have JSN higher, but there's the draft capital for Gibbs, and situation for Gibbs is going to decide this one.
Yeah, knowing nothing else, I like JSN.
I have JSN higher right now, though.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no point in speculating more than that. Yesterday, I completed a trade. Give Geno Smith and Mike Williams, receive Tua, 10-team Superflex, half PPR. Oh, it's too easily for me. It's not particularly close.
I'll clap for that trade. That's a good buy for Tua.
I agree. Like that would be the side I'm on. I just like Tua is just not someone I'm actively trying to trade for.
Oh, really? I don't know if I agree with that.
I'm just really scared off by by the injuries. Like
You
I
know,
just think he's
the best
just
opportunity to take advantage of stuff is when there's blood in the streets.
That's fair, and that's fair. I think I'm just on the side of I'm just too worried that he's going to take one more big hit and he's done. Like that's kind of where I'm at, and like it's not like I have much to go for. You know, I don't have anything to back it up in terms of if you get 3 or 4, whatever, like you're way more at risk or anything like that. I just think that's just how it feels. Like he suffered a couple just really bad injuries last year, missed some games. And it just seems like something where if he can't figure it out and you know be better protected, protect himself, whatever it is, I'm just so worried that. But at the same time, what you're giving up to take that shot, I don't think is much at all. So I think I do see Tua being traded for a lot more than Geno and Mike Williams. So I like the trade overall, but I would be lying if I didn't say I'm just like scared of Tua overall as a situation.
You guys buying that there's Higgins news coming? Well, I mean, I do think he's going to get extended this offseason, if that's what you're asking. But, you know, I'm going to say yes. But other than that, it's just speculation. That's my Patreon link. From Nick. What brand of coffee do you drink? Coffee. There's my New York accent. Coffee. Do you bring it home? Drink it home, Tyler? Well, I drink a lot of different. I have an espresso machine, so that's what you probably see on the show. I also have some instant coffee from Waka Coffee. Not a sponsor, but please, if you want to, call me. Yeah, I'll drink any coffee as long as it's black.
Right there with you.
I'll pass on coffee. Sorry.
No coffee.
No coffee. I'm an energy drinker. Much to the hatred of my my doctor. He hates that.
No.
But
Trade offer. Terrace Marshall and Darnell Mooney or Bateman. Oh man.
It's just I'm like gross.
It's gross. Both are vulnerable. Like both are vulnerable to a first-round wide receiver being taken that would absolutely crush the remainder of their value. Darnell Mooney's shown more. Rashad Bateman's by far a better prospect, more talented. Terrace Marshall is irrelevant. I guess I'd lean on Rashad Bateman. I guess. I don't want either.
Yeah. I don't like.
I have Rashad Bateman higher in my rankings by a few spots, and I'm not sure that Terrace Marshall is enough, even though it's only a few spots.
it feels like you go into the gas station to buy lottery tickets, the scratch offs, and it's like, do you want to buy the $20 one and Rashad Bateman, or two $5 ones and Terrace Marshall and Mooney, or a 5 and a 1?
Yeah.
Could you make out better with the 5 and the 1? Possibly, but I want Bateman there. I want to have the chance at the bigger money.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think Bateman has more upside, even if it's on another team.
Yeah. This is
an easy one. DJ Moore in 108 or CeeDee Lamb? CeeDee Lamb
easy
by a
CD.
lot. Not close. Looking at
I've
trade
offered
Foreman.
significantly more than that to try to acquire
Yeah.
CD, and I have not been successful. So
CeeDee Lamb's hard to
absolutely
buy.
smash that.
Looking to trade Foreman to a panicking Khalil Herbert owner, what kind of pick would you let him go for? I'm not really interested in Foreman. I think the Bears will add
Any
some
third.
sort of running back. Not sure where in the draft, but I think they will add somebody, or if they strike out in the draft, they could be in the Kareem Hunt or Ezekiel Elliott market later on. I don't think they're satisfied with Herbert and Foreman as all they've got. They have a pick at 53, 61, 64, and then 2 picks in the 4th. I'd be surprised if they leave the 4th with nobody. And someone in the 4th would still have 2 more rounds of capital than Khalil Herbert had. So yeah, Foreman, I think, is just a total insurance policy. In terms of what I'd let him go for, man, I just don't see him as being
A
worth
third, right?
Yeah,
a
he
late
needs
Yeah,
a
third?
rhymes with bird.
Yeah,
Give me
a
a
third
third.
is fine.
Yeah, late third is. I think that's all you're really gonna be able to get. Like, I don't think anyone's gonna give a second.
Yeah, I have him
at
in
all.
a range of running backs like Jalen Warren, Samaje Perine, Rashad Penny, Wilson Jr., Harris, and Singletary, but he's last on that list by a lot for me. He's not the one I'm targeting as a 0 RB build. It's the one I think has the least upside and the most potential downside in value. So I'm just not that interested. Trade offer: Watson, Amon-Ra, and 2 late 24 firsts for Mahomes. 10-team superflex. 10-team superflex, so the quarterback's worth slightly less. And the firsts are worth slightly more because they can be the 110 at worst. That actually helps a lot. A lot of people don't consider that. The value of first goes up significantly in a 10-team because you remove the 2 worst outcomes. Man, I love Mahomes, but this is excessive. No player's worth this. 2 firsts, a quarterback who's worth. I mean, what's Watson worth in a 10-team superflex? Almost 2 firsts on his own. And then Amon-Ra, who's worth more than a 24 first. Maybe not quite 2, but not much less. So this is totally excessive.
And that's even expecting those 2 firsts to be 109 and 110. All you need is one bad week in the playoffs, and suddenly one of those firsts becomes from the best team in the league.
Or you don't make the playoffs at all.
105.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're looking.
Yeah.
Look at where you can get at 105 next year.
I think
it's the Watson side by a lot.
You see Mahomes being traded away sometimes, and it's like, player and 2, 3, 4 firsts, but these players that are in addition with those firsts are worth several firsts together themselves.
Yeah.
Like these are really good other players besides those picks. So I do think that the package side just has just a lot more value in terms of, like, that's the type of deal that you'd have to do to kind of try to get a Mahomes, but
that's why I never had
it's
Mahomes,
too much
unless I draft him.
Exactly.
In this case, I mean, I think fair value. I mean, even Watson, Amon-Ra, and 1 first is an overpay. That's even an overpay. So fair value is probably about, Watson, Amon-Ra, and maybe like a second. That's probably fair, but you're never going to get Mahomes for that. So probably just not getting Mahomes. Keep what you have.
Yeah. You have to overpay for someone like that.
I'm fine selling Watson, but if I'm selling Watson, I'm usually looking to sell Watson down, not up.
Mm-hmm.
All right. 12-team superflex, half PPR. Give Burrow, Russ, Pollard, get Lawrence in 105. Burrow. All right. So, this one's interesting.
Burrow, Russ, Pollard, or Lawrence and JSN/Gibbs.
Yeah, I mean, what's worth more, Russ and Pollard or 105? It's about right. And I'd rather have Burrow over Lawrence. I'll lean the Burrow side.
Is there any shot that 105 could be a quarterback?
Well, then I would lean the other side.
Right. Well, so it's just one of those things where you have to know your lead. You got to know those 4 in front of you. Obviously, we've laid out who we think in a superflex format the top 4 picks should be, not the order yet, but just like the top 4. And if you think, someone ahead of you is not going to pick one of those 3 quarterbacks, then I would like that side more. But
yeah,
I think straight up, we're looking. I would prefer Burrow, thinking that I'm not going to get a quarterback with that first.
I think we broke it down well. All right. I have the 102, 105, and 108. My quarterbacks are Mahomes, Kyler, Tua, Jimmy G, and Tannehill. I'm hoping to trim my quarterbacks down. Should I look to trade back for the 102 to draft non-quarterback? What should I get for trading the 102 for the 104, 106? Okay. In this case, I actually don't mind trading back from the 102 to the 106. If you can get like the 106, a 24 first, and something else, I'd be fine with it. You still get like JSN or Gibbs, and then you also get like a 24 first on top of it. Might not even need anything else.
I think specifically what you said about getting another future pick in there. I think that's important because I don't want to sell the 102 for the 106 and the 110 or like 112 or whatever this year.
Well, 112 is not enough. 110 is a
One-
little more reasonable.
Yeah, but even then, I would much rather the 102 for 106 and next year's first, and just have that shot than the 110 or 109 even or whatever.
Yeah, I agree with you.
But yeah,
Is there anything to add about this? I don't think there's too much to add.
Not really. It's just getting someone to pay it.
Yeah, that's always the key thing is you have to get someone to pay it.
Because worst case scenario is you take the best quarterback there at 102 and you trade it away not at the draft, and someone else comes and says, I want CJ Stroud from you. The fall hype gets you, and it'll come back even more than the pre-draft hype.
Yeah.
And that trade will be there later.
Who gets drafted first in the real draft? Bijan or the first 3 wide receivers? I'll be honest. I think there's a possibility Bijan is drafted before any of them to Atlanta at 8. So I'm going to lean toward Bijan actually going off the board before any wide receiver. I think JSN goes to Houston at 12. Bijan goes to Atlanta at 8.
I think that's more. I think it's more likely what you just said, Bijan, before any wide receiver than it is that 3 wide receivers go before Bijan. Like I don't think there's any chance of that. Even with what we talked about with the positional, values, the surplus, like money you can create for your team, whatever. Like all of that aside, like I don't think Bijan's making it behind, like all the way out and like behind 3 wide receivers.
No, I think if
we talked about 1 first-round grade wide receiver, like So
I think Bijan, if he makes it to like the Chargers at 21, they'll just take him and send Austin Eckler packing. But he's not going to make it to 21.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's early teen, teams picking in the early teens that I think if Bijan falls there, and like you said, the Falcons don't take him, and some of these other teams in between, like I think it's almost a no brainer.
I think Houston at 12 could consider Bijan if JSN is gone.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and we have other teams. I mean, Patriots definitely have gotten some steam recently. I would hate that too as a fantasy person, but I mean, I'm over in New England, so wouldn't hate it for my team.
Yeah. Well, anyway.
But yeah,
I think Bijan is going to go first. That's what I have right now.
I think Houston has bigger needs than drafting a running back.
I think Houston
As a
needs
team as a
offensive
whole.
firepower, though,
yeah.
which they don't have. But I agree with you.
Robert Woods and Noah Brown.
I do not. No. All right, this one we did. The owner didn't go for that, but he accepted this counter. Burrow, Russ, Pollard, Brian Robinson, get Lawrence, 109, 24 first, DJ Moore. That's a lot better.
Yeah,
that's better. Yeah, it's a lot better.
You added Brian Robinson and you switched that 105 to 109, 24 first and DJ Moore. That's
a lot better. Yeah,
significant.
I mean, I'd rather have DJ Moore over Pollard. I'd rather have the 109 over Robinson by a lot, 24 first over Russ, and then Lawrence as slightly worse than Burrow, but doesn't make up for all the other stuff. So great job.
Spot or two. Yeah.
Big one here. 12-team Superflex, Lamb, Dobbins, Penny, or Bijan, London. Bijan and Lamb are essentially equal to me. I'd lean Lamb, but they're essentially equivalent. So it's just London versus Dobbins and Penny, and it's London by a lot. So Bijan and London.
I like picking the side with Bijan too.
And then last question, actually. Well, it's not a question, but I think Lawrence is drafted in startups higher than Burrow next year. I wouldn't predict that, but I would say they could be equivalent. Lawrence would need to get a Jamar Chase on the team, I think, to have that happen. He just doesn't have that kind of elite talent, which raises Burrow's ceiling and floor significantly.
And they're also already like 1 or 2 quarterback spots in Dynasty apart, really.
Yeah, but it's a big jump to go up that last bit.
That's fair.
But the second part, I agree with more. I see Pollard being out of Dallas in the committee somewhere in 2 seasons. I actually think that this is a franchise tag and done for Pollard. I actually think they have no interest in extending him. I think they're planning on using him up and then moving on. So Pollard is a huge dynasty sell for me. They could draft a running back in the first round. They could draft Gibbs at 26.
Mm-hmm.
What would someone need to add to Chase to get to Lamb and 101? Wow,
Wow, now that is a big
yeah.
one.
You need to
lot.
add like the 103 or 104.
Yeah, you need to add a mid, at least a
103 to
mid
104.
first. Yeah.
But yeah, Patrick, you got anything you want to plug?
Just the Tuesday show here.
Yeah, Tuesday show. Hopefully, Patrick will be on more often as possible, if not every week. Hopefully, close to every week.
The plan is every
and-
week.
A plan. Oh, I love to hear that. That's my favorite thing to hear. Is planning every week.
Well, that's what our sources say.
Sources say Patrick will be on the show every week. So that Tyler's sources enjoy that. And beyond that, just make sure to hit the video with a like and a comment. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notifications bell. Check me out on Twitter. All of us on Twitter at our Twitter handles. And then if you really like my stuff, don't forget to look at the Patreon at patreon.com/fantasyadvice. But until next time, I'll see you all tomorrow at 7:30 Eastern, one last time next Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern. And then I'll catch you during my live streams on the NFL draft. Don't forget about that coming up. But yeah, anyway, peace.
Absolutely. Peace.